So this isn't specifically something that I worked on, but this is fun. I was going to show the
Sure.
kids. Here we go. Share screen. There. So specifically, what I study in archaeology is like dogs and humans in history. So this is like a dog. This is like it's a coyote, but I just buried it like I would a dog. And it was just the bones that I buried. I got it from a vet. And yeah, so like dog burials in the past would kind of look like that, and they would bury them just like people with some stone tools, and some grave goods like they would a person, which is neat. And I always thought that'd be it's a unique thing to look at because people bury people, but they also bury dogs, and it shows like a change in our mindsets in the past. That's kind of what it looks like there. And a common misconception is that archaeologists kind of use a bullwhip and a fedora and wear like a bomber jacket. We wear PPE just like everyone else, so you don't get run over by a bulldozer. That's kind of how it works. But there's another shot.
Now, how long ago did we start burying dogs?
The earliest dog is 14,000 years ago that was buried. Yeah, it's debated. There's one that's probably about 16,000. Sure. But it's kind of what they look like. And then if I can find it, here's a bunch of dog skulls that we've collected at the museum there. That's what they'd look like. But you can see these are all like wolves and dogs comparatively. That's a coyote. Keep going here. That's another wolf, and I think I have a dog coming up. There we go. Yeah, so you can see here in the front, these are dogs, and as you go further back, their like foreheads kind of get more sloped or more like straight, or like more sloped as you go back. Yeah, and that's like the transition between the two. And
right. Now, were we only ever domesticating dogs, or when did that domestication start occurring?
Dog domestication starts occurring, if I can find a post on it. Let's pull this up for now. Probably we know the earliest dog we have found genetically is about 20,000 years old. But that's like when the genetic signatures pop up. That compares with modern dogs. I'm probably going too hard for with the language. Okay. But dogs were probably becoming a thing for like at least 30 to 40,000 years, I think.
Right.
And that would be wolves scavenging camps. And I know I have a picture of that somewhere. Going too fast, real quick, but here we go.
I believe the first video I'd ever found of you was you were saying that dogs were used to go and get humans from like Asia towards North America, correct? I believe you had talked about that before.
Yeah. So there's a theory that hyenas actually were kind of keeping humans from exploring further into Siberia because Ice Age hyenas were just big, formidable animals. It's like a mix between a lion and a wolf. And it was kind of, intimidating to go through. But once people had dogs, they could kind of, keep things like that at bay at night and not have them attack attack their camps. So they could get further and further, and that allowed them to get to the Americas. Here's a picture of hyenas there with a dog. So
I see.
Cool. Yeah. I have a cool picture.
So it wasn't necessarily as slaves, because the way I had pictured originally was they were using them as like sleigh dogs, but it was more of a protection.
Yeah. It's possible they used them for like pulling sleds or sleighs, or use probably a backpack type situation. But since those things don't preserve, we can't be sure. But I would think that like as soon as someone had a dog that could carry something they didn't have to, they would have strapped it to them.
Right.
In my personal opinion. But
right.
Here we go. So they would have been coming here with those original people that were hunting mammoths, coming to the Americas. And it would have looked like that. Here's a site I worked on, actually. I was trying to find this one. Okay. So this is in Wyoming. And this is a big excavation block of, you can imagine, this isn't the same site, but this kind of site where there's this little river and the land right there, this is that. So there's a river down here. The mammoth was trying to either get a drink or it was down in that like ravine, and the people trapped it there, had nowhere else to go, and they killed it. And they dug it up, and kind of looks like that with a drone. It's pretty cool. The mammoth was about over here. We dug it out, and then now you're looking for the village over here, which we found quite a lot of. And then that's the point they used to get it. They probably used multiple, not just one, but
Sure.
it's a spearhead. And that is called a Clovis point. And those are the oldest points that you find in North America. And it like shows that people were here during the Ice Age, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty neat. Now you mentioned that picture, or at least that kill site for a mammoth. Where I work at is called the Silver River, and we actually have a mammoth that was found or dug up in the river there. So it's interesting that you had found one as well there.
Really? Yeah.
Yep.
They're usually
And if
found
I remember, say what was that?
they're usually found on rivers, which seems to be a pattern. So they must have just been trapping them or something. But
Right. And I don't know everything about this, but I believe I remember that the oldest archaeological evidence in the United States was actually in Florida, where they had carved something into a mammoth bone, or they carved a mammoth into a bone. I think that's what it was, right?
Paige Ladson, is that right? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty old. Yeah, it's cool.
I mentioned that because that means that humans and mammoths, like, there's just even more evidence that humans and mammoths were around at the same time. Otherwise, we had no way of carving what a mammoth looked like at the time.
Right, and that's one of the only examples too, especially in the Americas. Actually, I think it's the only example in the Americas. There's tons in Europe and Siberia, but yeah. And then this is I had an artist reconstruct this, but just people burying a dog, like in that situation I had before. But again, I like to show people that since I study human behavior in the past, it's important to show people, like, we have this conception of, cavemen. That's not really how people were. They were, at a certain point, they were just, us, but didn't have metal or cell phones. So they had our complete emotional capability. You could put these people and they could pass the SAT or a state exam if you, put them through school, but they just had mammoth bones and bison hide to wear, so it's important to think about. Yeah, so I always try to teach kids that when I do this kind of stuff. So and by that extent, they would also be sad when something like a pet died,
Of course.
Yeah. Let's see. Now I had another one I wanted to show. That could be done.
Now this might be digging a little bit too far, but whenever they'd bury a dog, those points that they would put there, the different stone tools they'd use, would those typically be broken tools that are no longer useful to them, or would that be active, like, usable tools still?
You
Or is there
find
a way to
both.
tell?
Yeah. You find both, but it's hard to say if they used, like, they made that one specifically for the dog in the burial, or if they made one, or they just gave the one that, like, the dog had been hunting with, like the person used that when they were hunting with the dog.
Sure, but it's not a broken tool, right?
Not usually, no. But you do find both. It just depends on how much they were on the move, kind of thing. But
Sure.
yeah, they do give that with the dogs often, probably as like a means to protect it in the afterlife, or probably as some kind of offering. Or like we do, we just give our dogs like a little trinket when we bury it or something. But
Right.
Yeah. And
Technically, there could have been other, like, leather work type things, or other like things that would have broke down over time that could also have been there, but we just have no way of knowing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where, like, my mind wanders constantly, because it's
like basket work.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. And clothing, and like, obviously we don't know their language, what like their music was like, what kind of mythology they had. It's all just gone along with their organic clothing, and their belts, their backpacks, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But so my artist and I usually kind of work together, trying to like come up with ways that people would how they would dress based on findings in that area, um, and like what a site would look like. So this would be in Poland, about 30,000 years ago. And yeah, so like I always try to teach this too. Like before writing, the only real way to teach people was to get into, so like the situation we're all in right now, everyone's sitting at these tables.
Sure.
We'd be sitting around a fire just telling a story, and an elder or just someone who knew the story would tell something, and pass that down, and that's how you learned things. So until humans kind of had the brain capacity at a certain point to do so like this kind of thing very efficiently, or possibly paint it on a wall to like have remember it better, um, like it wasn't as like able to pass down kind of thing. So that's probably um, like why around 30 to 40,000 years ago there's like this big culture boom of cave art all over the place, and the weapons technology gets more advanced, and then we make dogs and all kinds of
Right.
stuff. Yeah, but yeah, it's neat stuff. um,
So some of the questions I've been asked is, can you show us one of your TikToks?
oh no. Let's see if I can find one.
I can just give them the link to your TikTok afterwards, and so they can watch them
Okay.
that way.
I say oh no because I'm not sure how to navigate to it on here, but
That's okay.
yeah. uh
Or some other questions I was asked is, have you found any German Shepherd bones?
um I have not. German shepherds are pretty recent dogs, the breed at least, so it'd be a pretty recent site to find those, and I haven't really dug too many historic sites.
Sure.
um, yeah.
Another question was, what dig site was the most amazing to work on in your career?
Probably that Mammoth site. It was really cool. It was National Geographic funded. Like they gave the grant to fund the site, so they would come out and take pictures, and it was kind of like high profile, and they would do it. I was just there digging, keep my head down, but
Right.
uh, yeah, it was just neat, and they would always ask us questions, and I got to talk about it. That's pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, were dogs ever seen as a religious thing, or was it always just a tool or pet to them, or was it ever religious?
Uh,
Or is there any way to tell?
yeah, that's kind of what I had to think and thought there. It's possibility. There's dog sacrifices all over. In Siberia, I believe in Europe, there's a few. Certainly in the Americas, and like in the Paleolithic. So it could be something like that. It doesn't mean the dogs were worshipped. It could mean that they did it to bless a hunt or something like that. Like there's just no way to know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, it seems that dogs were quite revered in some way, or at least prized, because at a certain point, if you're a mobile hunter gatherer foraging and hunting, you're going to be hungry a lot, and it's a lot to feed a dog half the time. So
Sure.
you care for it enough to feed it in that situation. It means a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another student had asked, what was the oldest bone you have ever dug up?
Oldest bone. Um, the oldest bone probably was a horse bone we dug up in. It was in Wyoming, but not at that site. It was on this military base we were working on. Um, yeah. So horses lived here. I have a picture of that. There's one there, and this one. During the Ice Age, when mammoths were here, I don't know if they can see this, and lions and sloths and whatnot, there were horses still, but they died out with the mammoths. They didn't get brought back until the Spanish came back, or didn't come. The Spanish didn't come back. The Spanish came here, but they brought horses again. So before horses got brought back, the ones that bones you find here are like the extinct Ice Age ones, and we found one of those in like a shovel test one day, and it wasn't a deer and
Sure.
it wasn't bison, and I was like, "What is this?" And we had to ID it as like a Pleistocene horse, which is pretty cool.
That is
Um,
pretty neat. And in case any of my students want to see a Pleistocene horse, the Florida Museum in Gainesville has one. So
really?
in case you want to see one, yep,
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
yeah, good to
Yeah.
know for these. They're about an hour away from where that museum's at.
Okay. Um, had another.
If any of the other classes have any questions, put them in chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them that way. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking questions.
Sure, yeah, you can. I'm happy to answer them. Oh, I think everyone left, so I can move back to the other room.
Sure.
There we go. We had a tele lecture, so I had to undo that.
So what do you do in your lab then? I guess that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, actually, it's called the Veterans Curation Program, and we do so all this stuff back here. It's in tarps right now, but it's like boxes of archaeological material, and it's anything that the Army Corps of Engineers digs out in the Southeast. So stuff from Florida, Georgia, Virginia, and Mississippi, Alabama, and anything that gets dug out, we hire U.S. veterans to come and work and kind of clean the artifacts and bag them and enter them in the computer. And yeah, in exchange for, well, they get paid, but in the meantime, they get to look for jobs and try to get some skills to get back into the workforce when they get out of the Army.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So yeah, pretty fortunate. It's really hard to find a nice, settled, secure job in our field. So I kind of lucked out into this.
Are you from the military as well?
I'm not actually, but okay. I worked on a military base for 2 summers when I lived in Wyoming, doing it's interesting. They would shell the ground testing new bombs or artillery. And when they did that, they found a bunch of Shoshone villages. So we had to go dig those out, and that kind of helped me get this because I knew the lingo and stuff already. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so now I have a few more questions on here. Have you found any human bones?
Have I found any human bones? Yes, I have found quite a few. And that's a good question, actually. That's a kind of a teachable moment.
I thought so.
Yeah, so in the Americas, due to the sensitive nature of our history with the indigenous peoples here, finding indigenous human remains is a very legal process. So if I were to come across any animal bones or modern historic bones, I can dig them. But if I come across what I believe to be indigenous bones or Native American bones, I have to stop and I have to call the local tribes, and they have to tell me that it's okay to continue digging that based on their religion or their cultural practices. More often than not, they're happy to work with it, but sometimes they're like, let's just leave this at B. And if that's the case, whatever is trying to be built there, say a Walmart or a new part of the military base, they'll have to reroute the construction around it. Yeah, so it's construction doesn't like it, but I'm always happy to do it, and there's laws in place for it, which is it's nice. It's a way to give back,
Right. It's good protection.
Yeah.
How long did you have to go to college?
I went to college for 4 years for a regular college, and then I went to graduate school for my master's I went for 3 years. Some people do it in 2, some people do it in 4, it just depends on the program. And then if you want your doctorate, that can take 4 to 8 years. I did not want to do that. Sure, you guys kind of loathe school sometimes, so no offense to the teacher, but I didn't want to do that so much. I think about it a lot. I might want to go back one day and live with reindeer herders and get my PhD studying that or something. But yeah, it's a long time to go to school, but I'll tell all of you, it's when you're in class in high school or middle school, elementary school, and high school, you have to learn a lot of stuff, and it can be daunting and boring. But I mean, most people find it all interesting. But then when you get to college, it's more intense and can be boring if it's a class you don't like. But graduate school, when you want to study something specific, you want to do teaching, you want to do zoology, you want to do be an accountant. You're in school with people who only want to do that as well, and it's worth that wait to get to there, because then you're in a classroom with people who all get along, that all are nerdy about the same thing you are, and it's a really good time. So I would not the whole stay in school, but like it's worth it at the end.
I was gonna go and say the same thing of through primary, middle, high school, you're going through 7 different classes or 4 different classes at a time. Once you get to college and either your upper bachelor's or through your master's, you're taking just what you care about, like deeply care about. That's where your greatest memories and where your passion can shine through.
Yeah, I would say probably the best years of my life were in, and worst years of my life were in graduate school, but more the best years. It was a good time. Yeah.
Right. All right. The next question is that an Aztec temple?
That is Teotihuacan in Mexico. So it's the Avenue of the Dead.
Right.
The Temple of the Sun or Temple of the Moon, I think is what it is. Temple of the Moon.
Correct. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Do you carbon date your own bones, or do you send them somewhere else to date them?
The answer to that is I'm not smart enough to do that. But we do there are companies that do carbon dating, and there are universities that have a lab. I try to send them off to, it's a debate, because like I want to help a small company, but I also want to help students learn how to do it, to send them off to different places. But you can send them to either one, and they will do the carbon dating for you. And there's like procedures on how you extract the carbon out of the site to make it easiest on them. There was a lot of science behind that. There's a cool comic on that some people have made to explain it to people in school, so I can send that on. Yeah,
Sure.
I don't do it myself because I don't quite understand. I know how it works and like the science behind it, just like when I see the machines and how it all works.
I can give you the theory of how it works. I just couldn't give you the day-to-day of how it actually works.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, you're saying you know how it works, or?
No, sorry. I was saying on the same page as you.
Sure.
I can give you the theory of how it's supposed to work. I couldn't tell you the machine works at all.
Right. One of the like easiest or like most memorable things I learned in a class that taught me all that is that like the same atomic clock that makes your phone stay on time is the same atomic clock that like helps carbon dates work. So just trust that. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
All right. Let's see. There's a few more questions, and then I'll let you go.
Sure, I got time.
Have you ever found dinosaur bones?
Have I? I haven't found like any like Saurischian dinosaurs, which means like the big, grand, like what you'd think of as a Jurassic Park dinosaur. But I've found like early primates, and I've found early like just small lizard and like shell things before, but no T-Rex or Stegosaurus bones, unfortunately. I would love to myself.
Sure.
But those are more like in big rock formations, more so than in the ground recently. Yeah.
When you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, do you laugh at how they handle the artifacts?
Yeah. I mean, they're good movies. I watched them as a kid all the time, but Indiana Jones is what we call like a glorified looter. He just takes stuff from temples and doesn't even take a picture of like the context it was in. So like, how's anyone gonna believe where it came from? But I'd say the most realistic thing in that movie is when all of the students are running up to his office to get graded, or get their grades. But yeah, they're fun though. I like it.
All right, a few more. Have you visited the Tarpons?
I have, and actually, a friend of mine knew a friend of mine that worked there, or a friend of mine knew a friend that worked there, and got me to go in the back, and got to like see how all the stuff worked back there. And I was really glad I don't work there, because you got to like pick off all the tar, and like it seems like a process, but I mean it's a fascinating site. Actually,
Right, that seems pretty strenuous.
yeah, it seems like a lot. I think I have a post on Direwolves somewhere. Let's see. And there would be a picture of that in there. I don't know if it's on this slide or not. we can keep going. Let's see. Direwolves. Be around. Oh, actually can't remember. There is one, but you can see the La Brea tar pits in those pictures. It might be down here somewhere. I'll keep scrolling, but yeah, the tar pits are really cool. And the most important thing to think about with those is you get like the grazing animals that are hungry that eat grass that fall into it. But then when those animals are screaming because they're stuck and they're hungry, that attracts the wolves and the cats that want to eat them, and then they get stuck. So you find like an abundance of carnivore bones in there, which is really cool because then you can study all the, all the wolf bones that are in there.
Sure. Along that same line of, have you ever had the opportunity to see any full fossils with hair and tissue encased in ice?
Oh,
It only happen in either ice or with like deep mud, right? Either that's only two places that could happen.
yeah, it's like deep mud, like in a bog kind of thing, or you'd find them in ice. And I have not been fortunate enough to go on any digs like that. My friend does. He works in Siberia, finds stuff like that all the time. It's usually just paleontological, like it's just an old thing that's not like related to humans at all, but or in association. But occasionally you do find one, like that. This little guy, I think he's over here somewhere, was that dog that eroded out of the ice a couple years ago. And he had that weird transitional, like, is it a wolf? Is it a dog DNA?
Right.
Yeah. But don't remember where the direwolf picture went. I'll find it sometime. Anyway.
Do you study trace fossils of dogs, and what do you learn from them?
Trace fossils of dogs, like early fossils. Be the question.
I believe so. That's what they're asking.
Yeah. So there's like early like canid fossils in the Americas, like bone crushing dogs, and like so dogs evolved in the Americas a very long time ago, like wolves, foxes, all those kinds of things here, and then they migrated across the continents. But there is like ancient, like really big dogs that lived here, like dogs meaning like wolves or those type of things that lived here, and they're very big, but they went extinct. And the only things that remained are like the wolves, the jackals, the coyotes, and foxes, and like those extant foxes that live all around the world that are kind of different niched things.
Right.
Yeah. But if they mean like trace fossils, as in like old dog skull or skulls that we think are dogs, or maybe that they're wolves, yeah, people are looking at those all the time. I haven't done it myself, but
right.
Yeah. The direwolf somewhere. Anyway, oh, here we go. Direwolves. There's Jon Snow. There we go.
Yeah.
That's the wall of direwolves. It's crazy because they all came in there and sadly starved because they were trying to eat something, but they got stuck in the tar pits. But yeah, they just have endless amounts of direwolves there.
That's hundreds. Wow.
Yeah, and those are just the good ones on display. Like some of them are like busted up, but that's what they look like. And there's a misconception that they were like huge, like they show on Game of Thrones, but they were just a little more robust than modern wolves, but they still would have been like bigger in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna leave this as the last question. Did dogs evolve from wolves or foxes? Good to teachable moment, I think.
Yeah, so foxes are very distantly related to wolves and dogs. I'd say dogs definitely evolved from wolves, if not a common ancestor with wolves, or a common ancestor with modern wolves. So they both evolved from some ancient wolf. But the fun thing I like to always tell people is you are more related to a chimpanzee than a dog is to a fox. So think of it that way, even though they do look alike. So if you look at a chimp and you look at a human, like they look similar, but if you look at a fox and you look at a dog, they look similar, but they're also very different in ways. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking your time out to speak with us.